This is the Dialed In Angling podcast presented by Strike Master Augers, Onyx Fish, St. Croix Rods. This week, we are on Mille Lacs Lake exploring the rebounding perch populations on Mille Lacs. It's caught a lot of headlines this year. There's been a lot of anglers out there posting on Facebook, other groups seeing this rebounding of Mille Lacs perch. I know for a large part of our listening audience, some of them may have never even experienced jumbo perch fishing on Mille Lacs because it has been very dismal for the last decade, I would say. I know me as a guide and our guides, we've been just waiting for this perch rebound on Mille Lacs, and guess what? We're here. So in this week's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Greg Berg, Mille Lacs area fisheries supervisor. I'm also going to be going around interviewing different businesses to get their input on the positive impact it's had on their businesses. I know I'm seeing it as a guide service. And then lastly, we're going to recap the episode that we filmed this week. Me and my good friend Mitch Hackenmueller of Roach's Guide Service, we were out. We were showcasing these perch, showing you how to find and catch these perch, these locations that these perch live. And guess what? They're back. But first, my very first guest in the podcast is Greg Berg, Mille Lacs area fisheries supervisor. Thanks for being on that Dialed In Angling podcast.
Yeah, no problem, Tony. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So Greg, let's get a little bit about you, for your background, where you come from. I know you're fairly new to this job in the Mille Lacs region. So give our listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, definitely, Tony. Well, I've been working for the DNR fisheries for about 25 years. So I've got quite a bit of experience, but I've only been in this job for about 6 months. But I grew up in Baudette, up on Lake of the Woods, from a fishing community. I'm a very avid angler and really like to get out in the outdoors, whether it's hunting or fishing or anything outdoors. But I worked out of the Aiken Fisheries office for most of my career. So I actually have quite a bit of experience working on Mille Lacs. I've actually participated in almost all of the big surveys they've done out here since 2003. So yeah, just kind of settling into to my new role here.
You know, as I'm sitting in the fisheries office, it's pretty cool. I'm seeing nets around and fishing stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, as an angler, I think, I've talked to countless numbers of conservation officers, and if I weren't a fishing guide, I think I don't know that I'd want to be a conservation officer, just because then I wouldn't get to fish and hunt. But your job as a fisheries biologist, I could do that.
Yep.
I'm totally into fishing. So as I look around the room, I see fishing stuff, and it excites me as an angler. So, Greg, let's talk a little bit about, these perch numbers that we're seeing on Mille Lacs. I'm really positive on this lake. I'm always a glass half full kind of guy anyway, but over the last year or two, to see, the uptick in like this age one walleye, seeing all these little walleyes this year out there on ice. I saw them a little bit this fall when I was fishing, seeing numbers of yellow perch rebound, seeing Cisco's rebound. To me as an angler, it speaks volumes, because I think, what's plaguing Mille Lacs in the last decade, for example, would be the lack of bait fish. I've always said that, sitting on the fisheries committee, my input as an angler, what I see out there has been this lack of bait fish. And it's really great to see these bait fish populations rebounding like they are. Not to say that, Mille Lacs is fixed forever. It's such a big system, it can change. But what we're seeing now are, to me, great positive signs. What's your input?
Yeah, I think, I'm in total agreement with you. I wonder if we're not just kind of getting to a spot where the lake is kind of settling in again and getting back to normal a little bit. At least I hope it might be. And, you mentioned the good hatches of young fish this year. And for whatever reason, and we can speculate about a lot of things, but 2024 was just a banner year for fish production out on Mille Lacs. We had probably the highest year class of walleyes we've ever seen produced out there this year. Now as long as they survive, through about age 1, and we'll be able to count on them, a little bit more after that. But they seem to be super abundant. They seem to be very big. So that's nice to see. And not only that, we got, I think, the second highest year class of yellow perch out here on Mille Lacs that's ever been produced as well. So when we have good numbers of yellow perch, young of the year yellow perch especially, that just helps the entire system out. It helps, feed the small walleyes. It helps feed the big walleyes, the northerns, the muskies, everything. So if we have good perch populations, we generally have healthy species around the lake.
I know this fall I started seeing, big numbers of schools of bait fish, right? And I just remember coming to like a fisheries meeting and saying, I'm not sure what they are because I'm in my boat moving around and I see them on forward-facing sonar, but I haven't, gotten to like net out a few, And then I also noticed that I was catching smallmouth bass and walleyes that were, regurgitating or peeking up little ciscos, and I could tell they were ciscos by the fork in their tail, and so I'm like, okay, this is really great to see. We're seeing schools of what I think are perch, but I'm not sure, and then I'm also seeing these schools of ciscos. Now that I've had a chance to walk on ice and really put underwater cameras to use in a big way, I think you and I have spoke on the phone. I've spent hours and hours looking at underwater cameras in addition to forward-facing sonars. And just kind of, it just piqued my curiosity when I'd see these big schools of bait. And not only are we seeing big numbers of jumbo perch, I'm seeing lots of other year classes of perch. Okay. So, these 3, 4, 5-inch perch. I'm also seeing ciscos of varying sizes. I'm seeing the great big ones. And then I'm seeing a lot of these like 5, 6-inch, some 9, 10-inch. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of these year classes of both perch and ciscos? I even saw some spot-tail shiners, which has been great because, I don't know what spot-tail shiner numbers have been over the last few years, but I do have a couple of clips of massive schools of spot-tail shiners going by, which was great to see. Can you elaborate on any of these bait fish numbers or year classes?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can get back into the Cisco year class. Like I said before, 2024 was just a banner year, for fish hatches, and the year class of tullibees was also the biggest one we've ever seen. So tullibee grow pretty quickly out here on Mille Lacs. So those fish are already probably in that 6, maybe even 8-inch range. So I have a feeling that's a lot of them that you're seeing out there on your underwater cameras and stuff. And we do an assessment every year with special gill nets called forage gill nets. We actually evaluate the forage in the lake throughout the summer and the fall, which is kind of different. A lot of management areas don't do that, so we get to kind of see the first look at the forage base out there. But in addition to those 2024s, there's a few other year classes of tullibees out there as well. They get pretty big in Mille Lacs. One thing, overall, tullibee are a cold water species, and with climates and temperatures changing and things like that, their overall population has gone down a little bit compared to historical catch rates. But they're still there. They're still an important part of the lake, and every once in a while we see some die-offs in the summer and things like that. But then they tend to produce big year classes every so often and kind of keep things going, and it's nice to see. And as far as the perch, they seem to be producing a little bit more consistently now too than say they did like in the previous 10 years as well. So there's a few different year classes out there. The biggest year classes out there now, I think, are technically 4 and 5-year-old fish. I think the 2020 and the 2021 year class are kind of the ones we're fishing on right now out there. A lot of those fish are, 9 to 12 inches, and I'm sure there's probably anglers catching them even larger than that, maybe even some 13s and 14s. But They grow pretty well out there. It doesn't take perch too long to grow into, a fish that would be an acceptable size to an angler. Sometimes even by 2 years old, the faster growing ones would be approaching 9 inches. So that's pretty cool.
I spend a lot of time chasing perch on a lot of different lakes all over the Midwest, right? I love fishing perch in the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, even in Canada, parts of Lake of the Woods, Ontario. Like you, I have a love for Lake of the Woods. I started my guiding up at Lake of the Woods, mainly on the Canadian side, and finding pockets of big jumbo perch up there was always intriguing to me. I spend a ton of time on Leech Lake, Winnebagosh, all over. I love perch fishing. I absolutely love it. It's no secret if you ask anybody, or if you even watch Dialed In Angling, we do a lot of perch episodes because I enjoy that. And I think a lot of ice anglers gravitate towards perch fishing. I would say Mille Lacs, just based, coming from an angler's perspective, I would say Mille Lacs perch are right up there as far as size and the way they're built with a lot of other big perch destinations such as Devil's Lake, Lake of the Woods, South Dakota, the Waubay area. And I would say, just from an angler's perspective, it seems like our perch growth rates are pretty darn good in Mille Lacs compared to other lakes. You look at some other lakes where it takes a long time for these perch to get large. It seems like Mille Lacs, within 4 or 5 years, we can have jumbo perch. And so seeing these young of the year perch hatches like we're having it on a consistent basis is really going to bode well for the future of perch fishing on Mille Lacs. I'm just hoping, again, for 2025 to be another great perch year, because I know perch are prolific spawners, but they can also have this boom and bust cycle. We saw it on Mille Lacs, whether it was disruptions in the lower food web or invasive species. I'm not sure as an angler, but there was, I would say, over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen disruptions, within this lake for perch fishing. But if we can get a couple more consistent perch hatches, I would say the perch fishing would be here to stay. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think especially, if we're kind of settling into hopefully a new normal here, you could probably count on some more consistent year classes, maybe every 3 or 4 years, there's a big year class compared to those giant gaps when there isn't any. One thing we often see in fish populations, if you get a giant year class of walleyes or perch, sometimes there might be a gap behind them for a year or two, just because they use up so many resources because those fish are so abundant. But those are the things we'll be watching in the future, and we monitor, annually out there. So hopefully good things to come out there.
Yeah, absolutely. The lower food web is so intriguing to me out here with, you look around, even looking on underwater cameras, but catching these fish, they're spitting up different types of bugs. They're spitting up, bloodworms, all these invertebrates. And depending on where you're fishing in the lake, they're foraging on different things. And so perch are intriguing to me because it seems like they're opportunistic feeders. I've caught perch in Mille Lacs Lake this year where they're spitting up young of the year perch. They're eating their own. And then I've had it where they're spitting up small crustaceans, small crayfish. And then another area of the lake, they're specifically feeding on bug hatch. Can you touch on a little bit of that lower food web when it comes to their diet? I mean, I know, obviously, as an angler, if I see them spitting up crustaceans, for example, I know that I need to start looking around where there's a little more rocky area versus bloodworms. I know that they're coming primarily from like mud flats and stuff. Can you touch on their diet at all?
Yeah, a little bit, Tony. And I think you nailed it when you said that they're opportunistic, and they are. They eat a variety of bugs and insects. Anything from mayfly larvae to we call them bloodworms. Those are the larvae for the midges, and you get big hatches of midges out there in the summer. And then they're also very good. There's a lot of crayfish out in Mille Lacs Lake. And they're very, very good at targeting those young crayfish when they can find them in the rocks and things. And then besides, having a pretty good diet of insects and bugs, I mean, they're also very capable of eating fish as well. So little minnows, even little perch and leeches and things like that. So they can kind of make a living off of everything. Where some predators are more, adapted to just eating, specifically fish. So.
Yeah, I I always joke around because a couple of years ago I caught one of these great big Mille Lacs perch, and it was in that 14 and a half, 14 and a quarter inch range, which is a very large perch anywhere you're at. And it actually spit up a young of the year walleye. And we were joking as guides, of course, we're like, man, you've been getting chased your whole life by walleyes, pike, muskies, and avoiding predators, and now you're eating them. You're so big. So, the the last thing I want to touch on with these perch populations and just the popularity of perch this year is me as a guide. I spend countless hours on this lake. And I would say 2 years ago, we started seeing a lot of these, I would say 7, 8, even 9-inch perch. And I remember talking to some folks around the lake and other guides saying, man, I think we're in for a really good perch here. However, last winter hit, right? And there was, I wasn't out here as much as I normally am, just from a guide's perspective. I tend to err on the side of caution. So, we weren't chasing perch, especially later in the year when you're generally targeting perch. So I've been pleasantly surprised on the size of the fish that we're catching. Like you said, a lot of those 10, 11, 12, even 13 and 14 inch fish. And I've been surprised on the number and the frequency where I'm finding these fish. It's not just in one or two isolated locations. It seems like they're pretty widespread in the lake. Can you touch on any creel information that you may have? I know it's still early in the season, but are you seeing an uptick in angling hours that people are specifically targeting perch, or what are you seeing from from the fisheries perspective?
Yeah, well, like every year, we run a creel survey out there to monitor the pressure and harvest, and this year's just been a great year for getting around on the ice. We had good ice conditions early on, and it's been hanging in there. So pressure's up. People have definitely figured out that the perch are biting, so they're out there. There's an increase in pressure. And an increase in catch, they're just getting around out there pretty good. Walleye bite's been a little slow, but the perch seem to be, taking up some of those slow times out there when the walleyes aren't biting. So,
yeah, as a fishing guide, I've spent decades out here where I would chase walleyes in the morning, go perch fishing throughout the day, and then chase walleyes in the evening. I think that's what a lot of anglers are doing right now. It's great to see ice anglers in general on all our lakes across Minnesota versus last year. As someone who makes a living on the water and on the ice, I want to see sportsmen out taking advantage. And this has been just a banner year for ice fishing in general. Greg, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down and discuss with us kind of the state of the state and just getting to know you a little bit as an area supervisor. So thanks again, Greg Berg, Mille Lacs area fisheries supervisor, for being on Dialed In Angling podcast. You're going to want to stay tuned because I'm going to go around and talk to some area businesses and see how this increase of jumbo perch traffic is affecting their business positively. Greg, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tony. I really, really appreciate it.
All right, stay tuned for more Dialed In Angling podcast. The Dialed In Angling podcast is brought to you by St. Croix Rods, handcrafting the best rods on earth for an elevated angling experience since 1948. St. Croix Rods are truly a world-class brand that has earned the respect and admirations of anglers across the planet. I trust St. Croix Rods, and you should too. Check them out at stcroixrods.com. So our next segment in the Dialed In Angling podcast, I'm driving around Mille Lacs Lake, interviewing a few folks, how the perch populations are affecting their business, what they're hearing. Certainly business has been good. I just know I see a lot of traffic around the lake, especially on the weekends. My first stop is in Tutt's Bait and Tackle in Garrison. You can probably hear the minnow tanks running in the background. Tyler Barr of Tutt's Bait and Tackle. When it comes to perch fishing this year on Mille Lacs, what are you hearing? What's the word on the street? What are customers coming in asking you about?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here. It's been really good out there, really consistent. Just because, the walleye bite's honestly been a little tougher out there. So it's great to see the perch population taking a huge bounce back this year. And it's not just, we're getting 9, 10, 11 inches. I mean, I've heard up to 15 and a half inches this year and a huge amount of 12 inches, which is a lot of places you go is considered a jumbo perch. They're really fat. I know a lot of guys are having fun out there. It's really great to see.
Yeah, it is. It's, our whole episode, I mean, Dialed in Angling, it's amazing how many perch we catch in the episode. When people are coming in, I mean, what are they asking the most? Like for locations, what kind of bait's working? I mean, what are you hearing?
Yeah, what most people are asking is they're coming in and saying, hey, we saw on social media that the perch bite's been on fire. Where do I need to go? What am I using? Just people that have always come up for walleye and now they're seeing, hey, they're catching bucketfuls of perch out here. I mean, we want to get on that. So they're really just asking what they need to do and where they need to go and how to get them.
So if I were an angler heading out, let's say I'm just heading out of the Garrison area, what would you be looking for on this side of the lake?
Yeah, so really on this side of the lake, I'm looking at off the deeper edges of the mud flats, and not necessarily up on top, but kind of where it transitions down to the basin is where a lot of guys target up on this side. I know it's been really good. Mainly what you're doing is just pounding the bottom, looking for that school of fish. Front-facing sonar is a great tool for that as well. But like I said, just kind of that 30 to 32 feet off the deeper edges.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. You got some customers walking in the door, probably some perch customers. Thanks for taking the time on Dialed in Angling podcast. Appreciate it. Okay, my next stop is down at Reed's Outfitters in Onamia, southwest corner of Mille Lacs Lake. I'm sitting down with Hannah from Reed's. She not only works at Reed's, she's an avid angler. Her and her husband have been on Mille Lacs Lake bouncing around. Hannah, what are you seeing for customers this year? I know it's radically different from last year because last year we didn't have ice, but now this year people are here in big numbers. What are you hearing from your customer base that are coming into Reed's?
I have a lot of people coming from the cities that are hearing that the perch bite is insane right now. A lot of 11 to 14 inch perch. The walleye, I mean, you can find them and they're huge. I hear a lot of smaller fish, unfortunately, but a lot of people are coming up. They're ready to fish. There's ice on the lake finally, so they're ready just to be out there.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of those small walleyes as well, which is great to see for next year and the year after, right? But I've been talking with various business owners as we're sitting here. I can hear the bait tanks rolling in the background.
Yeah, we have tons of bait.
The parking lot was full. I'm seeing a lot of ice anglers coming. I mean, I'm interviewing you on a middle of the week, weekday here, middle of the day at Reed's, and there's people pouring into Reed's, buying various tackle and that sort of thing. What do you think? Obviously the perch populations are back. Most of your customers that are coming in, are they asking for perch advice? Are they asking for baits? For what are you hearing?
I'm hearing a lot of perch people. I'm also hearing a ton of walleye people because this is the walleye lake. So, I mean, we're the south end, so a lot of people think of us as the walleye side. Mm-hmm. We're selling a ton of bait constantly. Perch bite, it's crazy. I don't know.
It's great to see. I mean, I've been in, this is my second stop here, and both places I've stopped so far are packed full of people. As I come down 169 from Garrison, I'm seeing wheelhouse after wheelhouse. The lack of snow certainly helps with people getting around the lake. But this big perch boom for me anyway, we recorded a new episode of Dialed in Angling that'll drop on Saturday. we absolutely smashed the perch. And, I just wanted to get people's take. Would you say this, I mean, obviously it's a terrible example because last winter was a horrible ice year.
Yeah.
But would you say that just over the last month here, has business been booming, or are you seeing it ramp up? What else are you seeing besides
we
the
have
perch?
been nonstop every day with bait and tackle and augers and fish finders, everything, every single day for the last month. It's been nonstop. It's awesome. We got the product. We're ready to sell. We're ready to help everybody. It's been a great year.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with me and just chatting with me a little bit about what you guys are seeing around the lake. I know everyone that I've talked to has been all smiles like yourself. And, we encourage people to come up. If you're coming up to Mille Lacs Lake, you want to check out the lake in general. Reed's is a great place to stop. Swing on in. You got tons of gear, tons of advice. You're going to get fishing information from people like Hannah. Hannah, thanks again for stopping in and talking to us a little bit on the Dialed In Angling podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, my next guest, I'm down at Beachside Resort on the south end of Mille Lacs Lake. One of the hardest working guides on the lake, Mike Verdeja of Verdeja's Guide Service, kind of runs everything ice down here at Beachside. Mikey's a good buddy of mine. We joke around a lot. We guide together. Mike spends countless hours on Mille Lacs Lake. Mike, welcome to the Dialed In Angling podcast. I'm doing the tour around Mille Lacs Lake. I'm interviewing various businesses right now. What are you seeing for customers that are coming out to Mille Lacs Lake? This year, the vibe is obviously totally different than last year, but what are you seeing on the lake? Are you seeing positive impact from the perch populations? You tell me.
Yeah, all of the above. I think all in all, people are just excited to have a real winter. It's been a couple of years since we've been able to travel around Mille Lacs Lake, this well, and get to some of these, basin areas like you were talking perch. The buzz is out. Everybody's talking it. It's really showing up on the weekends. They come in the door. They come in the bait shop, say, hey, where are the perch biting? And people are catching walleyes too, but the perch have really been the star of the show. Really nice size. We're seeing a lot of 12 to 14 inch fish. And we started that in the bay early off, 6 to 10 feet of water. You got to sort through them in there, but guys can go in there and catch a couple hundred fish a day. You just got to sort to get your fish. Now that we're out and, the roads are working deep, we have 20 plus miles worth of road cut down here at Beachside, and we're into a bunch of basins. And now consistently seeing 12, 13, 14-inch perch showing up. People that are putting in work, obviously catching more fish. Some people just sitting in the house enjoying their wheelhouses, still catching them. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, it has. I think I'm pleasantly surprised in the amount of traffic that I'm seeing around the lake. And it's lake-wide. I got an opportunity today to drive around the lake, as a guide, how it is. You get into your routine, you get coffee at the same place every day, you go to the same spots, you plow roads, you do whatever. You don't get a chance to kind of drive around this lake and see what's going on. And so it's been so nice to drive around and interview people, but it's been really nice to drive around and see the amount of traffic on the lake and seeing where various people are fishing. And just like you, I'm a guide on this lake, so I know when I just look out to see at wheelhouses and fish houses, and to see if they're on reefs or if they're off structure. I see a lot of people that are off structure right now. So that tells me that they're chasing perch all around Mille Lacs.
Yeah, I think that early in the season, everybody gets that wild hair to go catch that 28-inch walleye out here. They're asking where the big walleyes are. And it was a really nice early spike. We were out probably 3 weeks earlier than usual down here, early December, already having wheelhouse traffic. We've seen a lot of big walleyes caught, and then they started getting a little stingy, a lot of food out there. The bigger fish got stingy, and these small walleyes showed up in waves. Everywhere you drill a hole, small walleyes. So perch really started taking over, and people started targeting them. I think people were just sitting too shallow earlier. I think they were ready to go, and they were out there. Now most people are sitting 30, 31, even up to 34 feet in the wheelhouse, and everybody's having success. So
yeah, Mike spends countless hours on the lake plowing roads, taking care of customers. I know just coming in here, it's bustling. Every business that I've been to on Mille Lacs today has had people in traffic, and this place is no different. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I know you're busy. He's carrying road stakes in his hand when I saw him here, so I stopped him for a minute. So I really appreciate you being on the Dialed In Angling podcast. Good luck the rest of the season. Appreciate you being on here. Swing by Beachside Resort if you're coming out this winter. Look up Mikey. This guy knows a lot about Mille Lacs Lake. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, my very next guest is Justin Baldwin of Nitti's Hunters Point Resort on the east side of Mille Lacs. I'm doing the tour around the lake. As you see, I am progressing. Now I'm up on the east side. Justin's a super good friend of mine. Him and George, you always see him at Hunters Point. 9 times out of 10, if you come into Hunters, you see Justin there. He's working his tail off. Justin, welcome to the podcast, first of all. Second of all, how is the season going for Hunters Point? How are things progressing? I want to get your take, how perch are impacting your business. Justin, take it away, bud.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Tony. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're doing here. Beginning of this year, last year was an awful ice season. Now everybody knows. And we were nervous, and I think a little bit everybody was nervous. We didn't know what was going to happen, first of all, with the ice, the fishing. So everything was kind of a slow start. We didn't really know where it was going to go. And then we started to be able to get some wheelers out, and things started to happen. And all of a sudden, the perch started to come, and they came with a bang. And it was a fantastic start. And ever since that beginning the perch have been still going, and it might have to work a little bit more for them than we did those first couple of weeks, but we're seeing people catch a ton of perch, and it's been super fun to see. And it's just been a lot of fun to see that excitement come back to the lake. Everybody's talking about it. How you and I were talking a little bit ago about, the phones are ringing nonstop. People are super excited to come up and get these perch and fish again on Mille Lacs. So it's been a lot of fun to see that excitement of our Lake Mille Lacs with everybody.
Yeah, like my books, I think you and I had this conversation early in the year. They were fairly quiet. I mean, you always get that early ice traffic, people that want to come out, catch big walleyes in Mille Lacs. But then, even the early ice stuff, I wasn't booking because we didn't have ice last year. And the year before, we had ice a little later. So I think people were hesitant to book early in the season. And then kind of that mid stuff, it just wasn't, it was there, but it wasn't great, right? And all of a sudden, bang, people realize the perch are biting, and they're biting in big numbers. I didn't, I even talked to Greg Berg, the area fisheries supervisor from Mille Lacs at the beginning of the podcast, and I was surprised how many perch we're seeing. As a guide, someone who spends hours and hours and hours, days and days of their lives out on Mille Lacs, I'm surprised how many perch are actually out there, because I'm seeing them in big numbers on underwater cameras with forward-facing sonar, reports from people all over that are catching them. It's not just isolated people on certain sides of the lake. I've been able to go around the entire lake and get takes of people and, what they're catching, where they're catching them, what they're catching them on. And it seems like everybody's catching them all around the lake.
And that's what we've seen here too. It's not just one area. It's been a vast area, where they're getting fish and drilling some holes and running around a little bit, and they're finding fish.
What's interesting too is, that the fact that we don't have snow, right? You can go and check spots, even with wheelhouses. Like if we had a ton of snow, your mobility factor goes from, great to nothing, right? That you guys spend thousands and thousands of hours plowing roads on Mille Lacs Lake. It's kind of nice. If you have a wheelhouse, you can come out, you can set up. If you're not catching them there, you pick up, move a little bit, so even on these really nasty cold days, you're still able to be mobile in the wheelhouses because you can kind of get around. So you get out into these areas, you can move around with the wheelhouse. You could even set up your wheelhouse and then just kind of hole hop around. I've been telling a lot of people that, perch are notorious roamers. So to think that you could just come up and set up on one spot, not move all day long and catch them all day long is just not the case. You most of the time you have to be mobile, but there are times like when we filmed Dialed In Angling, we didn't really move, but we drilled to find those fish. And so if you're coming to Mille Lacs Lake, I see lots of people that come through Hunters Point. The first thing they ask you guys, okay, where do I go for perch, right?
100%.
Okay. So you come in, Hunters Point or these resorts that we've interviewed are going to give you an area to check. Once you get in that, it's your job to kind of find fish from there.
And that's been a lot of fun too this year. How you talk about, not snow and being able to be mobile. A lot of years there's a lot of snow. We could drill a road and you're just going right off of that. So you got a lot of traffic, you got a lot of people in these little areas. This year, being able to get off the road a little bit, still within our structure and stuff, you can get off and get away from people a little bit. And I think that's helping these anglers out a ton as well.
Yeah. And just not having plow trucks going up and down and having vehicle traffic. I see people, they're a little more spread out. Yes, they're condensed into those real high percentage areas or popular reefs, for example, but there are people branching out. Kind of this last weekend was a great indicator of like people can kind of do their own thing. You didn't have to be in the big groups. And I don't care what species you're chasing. I always tell people stay away from the crowds. Doesn't matter if you're on Mille Lacs, Lake of the Woods, Red Lake. You want to be successful. Most of the time, you have to stay away from people. And it doesn't mean miles away from people. It could be a few hundred feet, And with these perch, we've noticed a lot this season too, where they're along those transitions or they're just off structure. You don't have to be way out in the basin. You're kind of just off structure and kind of pick your areas to stay away from the folks. But I will say, now versus even earlier this year, the fish aren't quite as spooky as they were even when we were drilling holes on early ice. It seems like those fish sort of settled in. They're used to the noise. But yes, too much traffic, you're always going to drive those fish away from those locations. If someone's coming to Hunters Point, what would they look for, first of all, for perch and walleyes? I know you guys have roads all over. You guys do a great job. What are some of the things that your customers are finding when they're coming out of Hunters?
So as far as the perch, when they're coming out chasing perch, we got a lot of these rock structures out in front of us, kind of getting adjacent to them in that mud muck bottom is where we've been finding a lot of perch. So their perch are roaming around there feeding in that mud muck area, like I said, adjacent to kind of some of these rock reefs. And that's where we've been seeing most of the anglers having success is in that area. The walleye has been a little bit tougher. What I've been hearing there is being as quiet as you can and getting shallow, 8-9 feet, and even getting tip ups away from your house, especially with these people set up their wheelhouse and you got your generator running and you're partying and hanging out. Get the tip ups up away from the house and that quiet, 8-9 feet. And we are seeing some bigger walleyes caught there. But part of the excitement to the lake is this small walleyes coming up too. There's tons and tons of these small walleyes, which, might not bode well right this minute for catching them, but it's super exciting to know what's in our future.
I've interviewed a few people and they said, oh yeah, you catch all those little walleyes like it's a bad thing. And, it may be for now, but it's a great thing for the lake.
So exciting to see.
Yeah, they're absolutely everywhere. So Justin, thanks for sitting down with me for a minute and talking and giving your take on what you're seeing on Mille Lacs. If you're coming up to the lake, certainly Hunters Point has plenty of road systems. Justin, George, the whole crew, they're always good about giving information. So swing on into Hunters. Okay, we're on the north end of Mille Lacs. My next guest is James from North Mille Lacs Lake Ice Fishing, straight out of Red Door Resort. James does a lot for the resort, runs a lot of things out of the resort, now running North Mille Lacs Ice Fishing. You and your wife, Chantel.
Correct.
Yeah. So if you're on the north end of Mille Lacs, you probably recognize this guy if you've been in Red Door Resort. James, thanks for coming on our Dialed In Angling podcast. We're going around interviewing everybody, getting their take on how the ice season's going, how the perch are affecting their businesses in a positive way. What are you seeing up here on the north end of Mille Lacs?
A ton of traffic. A lot of people that normally wouldn't come to Mille Lacs, coming out to Mille Lacs to chase the perch bite. A lot of hubs, a lot of just daily drive outs. And phenomenal fishing. I mean, it's absolutely incredible fishing. The big perch, anywhere from, seeing a lot of 12-inch buckets, a lot of 13-inch buckets. Our rentals, 25 rentals, everybody's catching perch. It's been a phenomenal season so far.
Yeah, it's funny because I think when I listen back to this podcast, you're going to hear a lot of that. Everybody's saying, hey, I can't believe the size of the perch, the numbers of people that are enjoying this resource. I can think back, it's been at a minimum of 10 years since we've had perch fishing like this. I remember some of my fondest memories of perch fishing as a kid have been on Mille Lacs Lake, kind of in these same locations that we're finding them now, and catching these great big giant perch and being out there where people didn't really care about them back then because it was like they were everywhere in Mille Lacs. But now that, a lot of younger anglers that are really getting to ice fishing, that maybe even in their 20s, had never experienced this perch boom like we are seeing right now. At North Mille Lacs Ice Fishing, I know you do a lot of rentals. You send people in places. You set wheelhouses. You tell people where to go. You just had some customers in here. You gave them some information on where to go. Like if people are coming out of Red Door or North Mille Lacs Ice Fishing, what would you recommend like for locations for them?
So what I'm telling people right now, so on the wheelhouse side of things, we got about 12 to 13 miles of road in, going to put a few more in today. We custom place every wheelhouse that comes on if they need it. We're trying to target the perch locations, 30 feet of water, 30 to 50 yards off the edge of the mud flats. Our first and second break transitions between sand and mud have been fantastic. Currently, we are shuffling all our rentals out to 30 feet of water to target specifically the perch bite. And we're just trying to keep everybody telling people move around. If you bring a wheelhouse and you come up here for the weekend, if you need extra slot plowed, some of these drifts are getting pretty hard out here. If you need extra slot plowed, just, call the resort. We'll come out, we'll move you multiple times a day if that's what it takes to keep you on the fish.
Yeah, it's been nice this year without having a lot of snow to be able to kind of be mobile. Even if, I was just talking down with Justin at Hunters or Mike Verdeja down on the south end, and get set up, and being mobile is always key for perch anywhere you go on the lake and anywhere you go fishing, period. Perch, the best thing that they do other than feeding is swimming. They're always moving. They're always on the move. So it's nice when you have a year like this without a ton of snow that you can kind of get around. But yet there are still places where you can get stuck. As I drive around the lake, I see giant heaves. I've been on Mille Lacs a lot this winter, and all that kind of drifted up ice with snow over the top of it. It's hard to see, especially on days where it's gray. So it's nice to be able to go out of a place like North Mille Lacs Lake Ice Fishing, where, if you get in trouble, someone's got your back.
Oh, absolutely. I tell everybody, whether it's us here at North Mille Lacs or, any other resort on Mille Lacs, make sure you're checking with them, talking to them. They're going to take care of you if you get in a bind out there. I can't stress that enough. We've had up to 5 bridges out in one day here and as little as none. So, you just got to be prepared and, communicate with those resorts and make sure you're getting their assistance when needed.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even just with this last warm up, how many heaves have occurred around the lake. I see people post on Facebook all the time. Don't take this road. Don't do this. Always go through the resort. I everywhere I go on the planet, I love fishing big water. So everywhere I go on ice, within the ice belt, I almost always go out of a resort, go out with guides, because they're going to direct you through those safe paths. They know every inch of that ice. James is on the ice every single day up here on the north end of Mille Lacs. He knows every inch of this ice right now. He knows where the fish are biting. So definitely get a hold of him if you're coming to Mille Lacs Lake. Always on fish. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I know the buzz around the lake are perch. We filmed a great episode of Dialed In Angling, and I love to see it. I am actually, you can't wipe the smile off my face because of just saying the perch are back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's got everybody excited. Wherever you're going on the lake, happy to help you here. But wherever you're going, you target those perch. It's going to be a great season. We got 4 weekends left to go. Get out here and catch them. Chase them while you can before we get a bunch of snow, because we're bound for that one snowstorm. It's going to hit eventually, and then it's going to make traffic limited. So get out here while you can.
James, thanks for sitting down with me. North Mille Lacs Lake Ice Fishing. Look them up. They do a heck of a job on the north end of the lake. James,
Thanks
thanks
Tony.
for being on.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, and then last on my stop, I'm up in Melmo, Minnesota at Sue's Bait and Tackle. She sells a ton of lures, a ton of tackle here. You know, I can't say that there's another bait shop on the lake that I don't spend more time at than Sue's Bait here in Melmo. So swinging in here, Sue, what have you seen this year as far as the customers that are coming in, talking about the buzz around the lake? What's your take on it as far as what your customers are seeing?
I'm seeing even the walleye customers come in, switching from walleye to perch. The perch is going fabulous out there.
So our whole dialed in angling this week, we tackle the perch issue and how it's been the buzz, not only around Mille Lacs Lake, but in the Midwest. You know, a lot of people are talking about it. They're talking about it on podcasts. They're talking about it in social media. You got customers walking in the door, getting bait. That's great. Everywhere I've been around the lake, it's hustling and bustling. It's almost like the old days of Mille Lacs Lake. If customers are coming in, what kind of bait are they buying for the most part? I mean, what are they using the most, would you say?
For the perch,
Yeah.
Tons of larvae going out. Then waxies. Some are using minnows, but mostly the larvae.
Okay.
I have packed tons of larvae.
That's what we used on the segment. So that's no secret there. Bait is key if you're perch fishing. A lot of times, especially when they get finicky, downsizing your spoon or using small tungsten with larvae on it, you're just going to catch more perch. Sue, I appreciate you taking the time. Sue's Bait and Tackle in Melmo. If you're up in this area swinging, she's always got tons of bait, tons of good tackle selection. You're going to want to stay tuned because when we come back on the Dialed in Angling podcast, we're going to recap this segment. We're going to tease out a little bit on what we found on this episode, and we're going to show you exactly how to get dialed in on Mille Lacs perch. onX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Download the app today to get fisheries information in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, along with research tools for serious anglers and beginners alike. Filter lakes by species, trophy only, keeper fish, abundance, or all of the above. Plan which lakes to fish with the app, navigate to the accesses, and once you're there, use the onX best-in-class weather imagery and fishing hotspots to catch more fish. onX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you would never known existed. onX Fish, the app that is changing the game on ice. All right, for our final segment of the Dialed in Angling podcast, we are going to tease out a little bit of the episode. My guest sitting next to me is one of my really good friends, good buddies. We hunt, we fish together, we guide together. Mitch Hackenmueller, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to meet everyone out there.
Hey, I tell you what, I've had a lot of fun filming for Dialed in Angling all season long. I've been able to fish all over the ice belt and in these incredible destinations. I've fished with incredible people. But what we did this week on Dialed in Angling was an absolute gas, okay? I don't care if you're 8 years old, if you're 80 years old, anybody who would experience the bite that we had this week is, you don't have a pulse if you didn't like it.
Yeah, it was unreal. That was like going back in time, like being a 10-year-old. That was a riot.
So I'm not spoiling the episode by saying we caught perch. We caught a lot of perch. Mille Lacs perch are back. I mean, that's the premise of the whole episode, is us breaking down the fishery and getting after it just like we've done for decades. But it's been a long time since we've had good perch fishing. It's been a long time since I've been excited about perch fishing on Mille Lacs. I mean, it's been at least 7 years, maybe 8, since we've had good perch fishing.
Feels like more.
But to see perch like we did, not just for this episode, but like we're seeing for guiding in the lake, it's pretty darn cool, man.
Yeah, and it just seems like it happened fast. All of a sudden this year, boom, you know? And
Yeah,
it's like the biggest story in ice fishing, at least in central Minnesota for sure, if not the state.
I would say for sure the state.
Yeah, it's crazy.
If not the Midwest. I mean, I'm getting calls from my customers like in Wisconsin and Iowa, and they're like, I'm seeing the posts from people catching perch. And what's impressive about Mille Lacs perch is they're not just there in big numbers. Some locations you go to, you have to weed through lots of small ones to get some nice ones, which is fun. I love doing that. That doesn't bother me. I love seeing the Christmas tree of perch coming up. Other locations, you're dealing with giant perch, but they're super finessey.
Yes. Yep.
That's not the case on Mille Lacs. You're getting the Christmas trees of giant ones.
Yeah, and when you get them fired up, it doesn't matter. Everyone is big. It's not like you're sitting there trying to decide, do I want to go down to this one or away from this one? No, you just get at the top of that Christmas tree and have fun.
Well, and I think a lot of it has to do with not only the amount of the big perch that are in the lake, but the small ones kind of steer clear. They're not, I mean, you could see like, anytime I put an underwater camera down, or if you have forward-facing sonar, even on 2D sonar, those little ones clear out and those big ones come flying in.
Yeah, the big ones are bulls. They're in charge. They don't. I mean, they come, and that's like Tony said. I mean, when you get them coming in, there's no picking and choosing. It's the whole school is all jumbos. You know, everyone is a big perch.
You know, going back to when I was a kid, I used to chase perch a lot. I remember going with my dad and his buddies. We'd go up to Winnemagosh or Mille Lacs. You know, we'd go to different lakes, but we went to Winnie a lot, and we would just drill a ton of holes in a straight line until you bumped into the school. I mean, literally, there would be like 5 guys with augers, and they would just be drilling nonstop. And then we had, as kids, our job was to take like a jiggle stick or a rod, drop it down to the bottom, hit the silt, and bring it up. If you didn't have a perch, you went to the next hole. And that's how like ice trolling was born for me. And so fast forward, let's say 10 years ago, we used to go out on Mille Lacs and we drill grids and grids over the basin or along the transition lines off structure, looking for these perch. Now it's different because you have forward-facing sonar, but you still end up drilling a lot of holes and looking a lot of places. That you don't realize how big the transition areas are, how big the basin is. Even just off a structure on Mille Lacs, if you just start drilling, even with forward-facing sonar, you don't realize how much area you have to cover to find fish.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, you can spend a whole day, 2-3 days out there trying to just search off structure. Because it is, like he's saying, I mean, it just continues. And it has helped. I mean, bringing it back to the guide days, I mean, I remember when he's saying we would drill grids, you would have 6 guys, and every one of them 6 guys would be drilling 200 holes a day. I mean, I remember counting one day, and it was like 224 holes we drilled that day. It's just myself, you know, and that's me, one of 6 guys doing that, chasing these. Where now we can put that forward-facing sonar down. You might drill a hole, but now we can skip up, you know, 100, 200 yards, drop it back in. But you do this all day long in a vehicle or on a 4-wheeler too. It's no different. You're covering more water. You're still drilling a ton of holes. You could get lucky and that first spot might have them, but it might not.
I remember drilling like, you know, a gallon of gas gets you lots of tanks in your auger gas, right? I mean, how much is a gallon of gas in the old Strike Master augers? It had to be 10, 12 tanks. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I remember drilling out to the point where we ran out of our gallon of gas. We had a full gallon plus full tanks in our augers, ran out. That's what I love about battery powered augers now, lithium batteries. Like yesterday, you know, when we were filming, you had a battery getting charged in your truck. So I was like, oh, sweet, you brought your charger just in case. But we didn't have to drill as many holes as I thought we were possibly going to drill. And it was cold. You know, we just filmed the episode yesterday. It's going to drop this Saturday. You know, it was cold out and nasty. So I just figured, you know, perch fishing and looking for perch, we were going to have to drill. We had been on a really good school of fish, but it's been absolutely bombed by people. People are hearing about this perch bite. Again, it's one of the biggest headlines in ice fishing this year. And so there's a lot of people out there taking advantage of it. You know, there's people coming out, they want to catch perch. They want to see these great big Mille Lacs perch again.
Yeah.
And so we had to find fresh fish for an episode. And so I thought, well, we're going to have to do some serious drilling. And you and Nick went and scouted around a little bit, which helped because of the vastness of the basins.
Well, it's just the vastness, and the amount of people that are fishing. You know, like Tony said, everyone's just super excited, and it's been a while since you've been able to go, to Mille Lacs, which is closer to the main hub of people in the Twin Cities, and actually have fish that you can catch and keep again, and especially ones that taste as good as perch do. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, we had to put some effort in to find new ground, which is common with guiding or anything. You're always kind of on the search or hunting or looking for new, So yeah, when one spot blows up, we got to kind of go look. But even looking, I mean, we didn't really want to mess with them much. So you don't know how many are really there.
Yeah.
Number one, you don't want to draw a crowd if we're going to film. Number two, you don't want to hook fish that you want to hook to film an episode with or put guide customers on.
Yeah.
So yeah, we didn't know how yesterday was fully going to go until we got there in the morning and started just drilling and getting after them.
But we didn't have to drill as many. I mean, I didn't even use half a battery from that lithium.
No.
But that's my point is like, it seemed like with gas augers, you'd get a lot of holes, but man, you were burning through gas and you were filling up on gas and starting an auger. You forget how easy it is just to grab an auger, push the button, battery powered, boom, you drill a hole and you're fishing. We didn't even, you were charging them. I did bring quite a few batteries because sometimes perch fishing, you drill one battery. Sometimes you drill 3 or 4. I mean, I've had days where I'm just scouting for guide customers.
Wow.
And I just remember in the past, I mean, you'd have to drill a lot of holes, even scouting for walleyes on Mille Lacs. Mille Lacs is such a big lake. Like you don't realize even drilling structure, you touch, I don't know, 3-4 spots and you've burned up 8 hours in a day.
Yeah, that's like a whole day. It can be because them 3 or 4 spots when you're talking basin fishing or transition lines off structure. I mean, it's a lot of water, lot of water.
I don't want to tease out the entire episode and I don't want to ruin the episode for people that want to watch. But if you are passionate about perch fishing, if you love ice fishing, if you love fishing Mille Lacs Lake, this story is really a good story because not only are the jumbo perch back, but if you drop an underwater camera in Mille Lacs right now, you're going to see huge perch. You're going to see small perch. You're going to see small walleyes. You're going to see big walleyes. You're going to see tulibies. You're going to see small tulibies. You're going to see spot tail shiners. That speaks volume for this fishery right now. This is a lake that over the last 10 years has been just swarmed with controversy because the limits were cut. There was no bait fish in the lake. The perch disappeared. The invasive species were there. And so Mille Lacs has been just kind of swarmed with controversy, I would say at least for the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the case anymore. This lake has really bounced back. And I know perch are very cyclical by nature. I mean, I remember years ago, perch populations being very large on Mille Lacs, jumbo perch, and everybody was out there drilling holes and fishing in their hard houses. I remember sitting in a hard house on Mille Lacs with a giant bucket of perch and catching them on rattle reels and just kind of primitive ice fishing stuff, right? And, a couple years later, those perch were gone. That's the nature of perch. They can boom or bust, where you see it in a lot of lakes. You see Leech Lake. Look at a few years ago on Leech Lake. There was hardly any perch. Now they are back. I would say Leech, the perch numbers are really good. Winnebagosh is sort of experiencing right now. As a kid and all growing up, perch numbers were great. They sort of crashed. They got over harvested. I don't know. I think a lot of it just has to do with their cycle, their life cycle, but they disappeared. But then if you go to like the early 2000s, 2010, 2012, perch numbers really rebounded in Winnie to the point where we started seeing some bigger perch again over the last few years. Now they're disappearing again. If you go up to Lake Winnebagosh, you can find some big ones, but the numbers aren't there.
Yeah.
And so all these lakes cycle, but it just seems like Mille Lacs, we weren't going to have a perch population again.
I just never knew if it was going to happen again. Not like it was 10 years ago. I just didn't know if it was going to do it. And all of a sudden this year, it's just like, boom. I mean,
well, I had been seeing them, right? So the last couple winters, people have been, especially late ice is when they show up. I mean, if you want to really target jumbo perch, it seems like from right now through February, March, even into April, if the ice is safe, those fish just continually come in, right? And they start to get really schooled up versus just a perch here, a perch there, a couple here. I mean, we started seeing it on this episode of Dialed In Angling where you're looking out with forward-facing sonar and we could identify schools, not just individuals. So
correct.
As you get into March, they're going to start showing up. So the last few years, I just remember guys coming in saying, hey, we bumped into a good school of perch. They're decent size.
Yeah.
They were like 8, 9, 10 inches. Then last winter, obviously we didn't have a lot of ice, so people weren't out there targeting them. But I did catch a few perch, like when I was targeting walleyes, like on mud flats and off, fishing deep water around the mud. I bumped into some really good perch where I'm like, wow, these are going to be jumbos next year. But the weird part is this summer, I didn't catch as many as you'd think, right? I caught a few perch, but and part of it maybe, and I always say this in the summer too, is sometimes these perch will just be up. They're notorious roamers, right? Perch by nature roam on, and especially on Mille Lacs. It's not like some lakes where they'll go up into cabbage beds and sit there all summer.
And they're going to be there. Yeah.
No, they're out in the basin. There's so many different bug hatches they're feeding on, so they're everywhere. But this summer, I didn't really bump into them.
It seems like you'd usually get one or two, you know what I mean? Or maybe one every 4th or 5th full day guide trip, But I mean, when you're bumping into them, you weren't bumping into massive amounts, but still
it was like one or two
big enough ones where you're like, oh, is this going to work? I mean, could it come back was always the question you'd ask yourself when you'd catch one or two of those, The
only school that I saw, I used to target them in the spring, in the fall, all winter. There was a couple times, like with forward-facing sonar, I saw pods of fish, and I was like, gosh, those look like perch. And I threw a jig wrap out there and caught one. But then, they move, they're gone. And I didn't put a lot of time and effort into chasing them down this summer or this fall when they start to load up again. So I didn't really know how many were in the lake. I figured there was decent numbers, but I think based on what we're seeing this winter,
there's a lot of numbers. I mean, it's not just one area. It's not just one place. No. I mean, you hit the right transition lines or right basins at right now when we're talking, beginning of February here. If you can mimic that, I think you can mimic it all over the lake.
Right. And I know, there's certain areas of the lake where people are catching perch shallower. We talked to some guys this weekend that were getting them shallower. We were mainly targeting perch that were along the transitions. When I talk transitions a little bit, we'll talk more about it in dialed and angling, but it's where the contours start to flatten out just off a structure. So it could be off a mud flat, it could be off a gravel bar, it could just be up on the sand break on the north end or the west side. You see those shoreline breaks, and then they transition from sand to silt to mud. And that's what we talk about when we talk transition lines. So just being clear on that. I'm not spoiling anything in the episode by saying that. But transitions is where a lot of bugs hatch. You got bloodworms that are popping out of the mud. You got those lake fly nymphs that we're experiencing right now. The later in the season you get, the more bugs that start hatching, like the big mayflies. Yep. And those when the perch are coughing up the mayflies, you 9 times out of 10 see walleyes in there. You'll see perch. You see tulibies. Everything's in there. They love
it's a buffet.
Mayflies. Yeah. it's like eating lobster every day to them, or shrimp. It almost looks like jumbo shrimp to them.
That's what they look like. Yeah, black shrimp.
But it's a huge source of protein. So when those start hatching, that's generally when you see the big numbers of perch really show up into areas.
Which comes back to that later ice time frame.
Well, and spoiler alert, if you're finding perch in some of these areas right now, in another 2 weeks, they might be 2-3 miles away. I mean, they roam so much in every system, but on Mille Lacs in particular, they're here one day and gone. I used to tell people all the time that I would way rather give people walleye spots than perch spots because they roam so much, and it takes me so much effort to find these fish.
Yes, it's a lot of work to locate them where you can really. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? I mean, once you find them, you can have a couple really good days of fishing.
But to get to that
point, yes, there's always work involved. Right. It's not you don't get to just drop in. Yes,
I mean, we work as teams as a guide service. We tend to work as a team where you have one person drilling, one person looking, one person fishing. I've always done that. You pack super light. I would say, put a bait puck in your pocket, grab a rod, a Markham, forward-facing sonar, grab your auger, and just start looking for perch.
Well, yeah, like when Tony said Nick and I were out, I mean, Nick was riding on my tailgate holding the live scope, and I would drive to the next spot on the graph, and he would hop off the back. He'd hold that. I'd drill a hole. He would scan quick. If we see something, we'd fish it quick. If not, he's back on. I mean, we're in and out of a spot in 30 seconds to a minute.
Right.
We've already scanned this whole area up to 150 feet. We're going to move on.
Yeah, just hopscotch. I mean,
efficiency.
but now you're talking, I mean, we're checking brake lines that are a mile long.
Yes.
So it sounds simple, like even in my mind, it sounds simple, but it's really challenging sometimes.
And it just takes time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, but we're seeing a lot of fish show up in a lot of areas. I really am. I'm more surprised now. Every day I'm surprised how many are starting to show up into these areas, and they're beautiful fish, man. Mille Lacs, I think perch grow faster than a lot of locations. If you look at like some of the big perch destinations where perch grow quickly, Devil's Lake, you got the shrimp. The Dakotas in general, you have freshwater shrimp.
Freshwater shrimp.
Plus they have different bug hatches and things go on. Mille Lacs Lake has hundreds of different bug hatches that happen. So our perch can grow really rapidly. So that's why you're seeing these perch like, boom, they're here, like they just showed up. Well, they've been here, this is a hatch going back for, 3, 4, 5 years. But,
and it's not like this is just 1 year class either. It's not.
There's several.
Yeah. There's how many different sizes in there that are all jumbos. I mean, you have your super big ones.
But we did see a lot of small ones too.
They're around too?
I mean, we saw that we didn't catch a lot of small ones, but you see them. Oh, yeah. They kind of like, I think they're so full on all the bugs and stuff that I don't know. They don't bite like other lakes, but you see the small ones. I learned so much by using underwater cameras. I've always said that. I mean, look at how many dialed and angling videos that we've produced and TV shows that we've produced that are based around the underwater camera. And yes, forward-facing sonar catches all the headlines right now, but using both, I mean, again, I don't want to spoil out the episode, but camera use is always going to be around. Like if you're watching a show that we're doing, I show exactly how we can find them with forward-facing sonar, but then we're using the cameras, especially to fine-tune.
Yeah, and especially with perch.
And
they're
these ones were
by nature.
Yeah.
And they love it.
Well, and these ones were snapping, right?
Yeah.
But if there's times where they slow down and they come flying in and won't eat it, by having that underwater camera speaks volumes. And you can't see that if you're using only forward facing, right?
No.
You can see their movements, but you don't see the subtleties. So having both is huge. You're going to catch way more fish. Even with our customers, a lot of times I'll just put an underwater camera with them, especially if they're not catching them. There's days where they're just flying up and biting, and you don't have to worry about it.
It doesn't matter.
But if you're coming to Mille Lacs Lake, if you're listening to the podcast, throw the underwater camera in. Mark will make some dynamite underwater cameras. They're super clear, high quality. You can see a long ways, and it's cool. Like I feel like a little kid every time I sit in front of an underwater camera, and I learn a lot, man. We watched tulubies that were stirring up the bottom that would kind of bring perch into our locations.
They're crazy, them tulubi. If you've never watched a tulubi on a camera, treat yourself once. They're a crazy
they're
fish.
Cool.
They're fun to watch.
Well, and they stir up the bottom, and then the perch are curious, and those tulubies too. You can kind of get a jigging cadence down to catch them because you see them chase your bait all the time on 2D sonar.
Watch reaction. Period.
You get to watch them kind of how they strike and how they slap their tail around. They're interesting. But even the perch, when they come in, a lot of them come in wide open, but then they almost put on the brakes, and so now you can just fine tune that presentation.
Yeah, you stop watching your graph because them little subtle movements you don't see a lot of times on your graph, where now you get to see every fin movement, every reaction, head turn, anything. If you're doing something in that cadence, or if it needs to be parked exactly still, where a lot of times you panic on a graph when you sit still, and you're like, oh.
Or you bump the sill, you smack the bottom and bring it up. Sometimes they hate when you smack the bottom, but these perch this time are loving it. I mean, they're feeding on the bugs down there. There's no doubt about it. There's no secret there. I mean, if you're going to Mille Lacs Lake, you're going to find that the perch that you're catching are spitting up bugs. Most of them are on those transitions. The unfortunate part is a lot of them are deep, so they're going to die. So, I encourage anglers, if you're going to harvest a few perch, great. This is a perfect opportunity to harvest them because they're deep and they're going to die. But don't over harvest. Or once you get your limit, you're done.
Try your hardest not to fun fish them. Yeah, these aren't fun fish to like. No, we want to be nice and just catch them and release them, but they're too deep. I mean, they're
the big ones because they have that great big egg sac, and then they're just coming up from deep water. I don't care how slow you reel them. They're susceptible to barotrauma. I mean, some of the spots where we were catching the perch along the transitions that are in that 24, 25, 26 inch range, 24, 25, 26 foot deep, those fish are releasable. But you start getting below 30 feet of water, the walleyes will release. You can get some of the small perch to release. Those little walleyes that are over the lake, they're fine. They jet. We watch them jet down to the bottom. They're fine. But those great big perch with that huge egg sac, most of them are, they get barrel trauma. And so I enjoy eating perch. We went out filming an episode. We caught a few perch to harvest. But you know what? I had a great fish fry last night with my family. I brought the fish home. Me and my son cleaned the fish. Showing my dad how nice these perch are. My dad was loving it because, he knows what perch populations have been on Mille Lacs for most of his life. And so to see that come back, that was just like the talk of dinner last night. And to be able to eat some perch for dinner out of Mille Lacs Lake
from Mille Lacs again
was incredible. It was. And it's a story that's resonating with a lot of Minnesotans, but a lot of people that love fishing Mille Lacs or did and maybe left and now are coming back. I know we're fielding lots of calls of anglers that are looking to come out fishing with us or also just looking for advice. My advice to you, if you're going to head to Mille Lacs Lake, you got to watch Dialed In Angling, first of all.
Let's start there.
Start with Dialed In Angling. But secondly, here's what you need to do. You need to go get some Roach flutter spoons. I'm telling you that marabou hair is like magic to perch. The other thing that you need to get is the Roach jig, because the Roach jigs are a small tungsten jig with marabou hair. And perch absolutely fall in love with marabou. It's so lifelike on the camera. I can see why. Those perch come in and they grab that. The other thing with that is tipping it with Eurolarva is great, especially if you don't need bait at all when they come in aggressive. You really don't.
When you get them all fired up.
When they're fired up, they don't even care
especially with that hair. I think that makes a big difference. That's why you don't need, if they're fired up, you do not need to have them Euros on at all times.
No, but I would get Roach rattle spoons. This is no joke. I'm telling you the truth.
Well, and again, watch the episode.
Yeah. And our customers have been just loving it. A matter of fact, I've had, people at different resorts and places around the lake saying, hey, I went to this retailer. They didn't have any of your jigs. Where do I get them? And I handed them a few because they're that deadly for perch. Perch love them. It's the marabou hair. But then tipping that with Eurolarva, loading that up with Eurolarva. You can put a minnow head on there. But the trouble with minnow head, they love minnow heads. The trouble with the minnow head is it falls off, right? And then you don't have bait on your hook, and you got to try to get down there as quick as possible.
You're trying to keep that school around. You got to be fast.
Keep that school around.
You can pop a hook out with Euros on and get right back down. Them Euros are still on there.
Right. So pick up those jigs, get some Eurolarvas, get some minnows. Dead sticks work great too sometimes for perch. Just a, sort of a plain hook or a light jig behind the dorsal fin if you're putting them on a rattle reel or a dead stick. And then what you need to do is get a map out, okay? And you look at structure. It could be shoreline structure. It could be mid-lake gravel bars. It could be mid-lake rock piles. It could be mud flats, right? And it's where that last contour ends and it starts to flatten out is where you need to start looking. Now, perch will come into structure towards morning and evening to feed. So there's plenty of spots. I know some people that had wheelhouses out this past weekend that were kind of on more on the rock than on the sandy silt transition. And they were catching perch at night and they were getting walleyes at night. So this time of year, if you're looking for a good combo platter, because you can still catch some walleyes at night. Yes, you're going to catch a ton of those little ones.
Which is good to see.
It's great to see. But there are some big walleyes biting, especially mornings and evenings and at night. There's, the walleye bite during the day has been really slow, but at night you're getting some walleye. So if you want to set up on a transition, let's say on the edges, right where that contour starts to flatten out or the last sharp contour, setting up there with your wheelhouses, say you're staying in a otter hub, you're going to do ice camping or whatever, setting up on those areas, and then during the day going out drilling holes out off that structure.
Yeah, and if you're going to set up, you don't need, because we're saying the last break line. That doesn't mean that break line, because that shows that on your map or on your chip. It doesn't mean that there's 15 houses in a row on what everyone's using for the same chip. You can go away from them guys 100 yards and get away from the traffic and the busyness and be a little more quiet, and you're probably going to be more productive. Just getting away a little bit.
I will tell that to anyone.
And it's basin.
On any lake.
Right?
It could be Mille Lacs, it could be Red Lake, it could be Leech, it could be Winnie. Don't go to the stay away from the crowds
Right.
a little bit.
Yep.
If you bump right into the crowds, you're bound to catch a few fish in there. Those schools are roaming, but people have generators running. They're driving trucks. I will say one thing about the perch and the walleyes. I don't know if they're just used to the noise by now in Mille Lacs, but like a few times we had trucks and things driving around when we were guiding this weekend, and the perch didn't seem to care.
Yeah, I mean, it was cold this weekend.
Yeah.
I know my truck never shut off. I mean, it was when we're running and gunning. It was chilly and didn't affect anything.
No, some lakes you walk over the top of them and they spook, but Mille Lacs, it doesn't seem like they're as spooky like that. But yes, just getting a little ways away from the people helps. But yes, setting up for morning and evening bites is great. But then, being able to be mobile, because perch move. And where you found them last weekend doesn't mean they're going to be there this weekend.
No.
Especially if you're fishing the edge of a basin or just off the structure. Other places too, they're going to really start showing up on some of those mid-lake gravel bars, like off the edge of those mud flats. I've caught so many perch off the edges of mud flats, and they don't start showing up till later in the season out there.
Correct.
I don't know if it's, it's obviously bug based, but all of a sudden you'll be fishing a mud flat for all of December and January, and you might have caught a couple perch, and then boom, February, March hits, and guess what? The perch are there. They start showing up. You see schools coming through. You start seeing Cisco's or Tullabies showing up in those areas. So setting up in those areas morning and evening, those high percentage areas, because we're still catching perch and walleyes in those spots, and then roaming around during the day. Looks like we're going to have a break in the weather, at least for through
this weekend for sure, and a little bit into next week, it looks like. So enjoy it. Get outside, drill holes, move.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough to move around when it was 30 below, but the fish were still biting. So that tells me, it's
with this warm up, it should even get better.
Yeah, it should. So good luck on Mille Lacs Lake. Thanks for tuning in to Dialed In Angling. I want to thank my guests this week, Mitch Hackenmueller, great friend of mine, Nick Sakella, Mitch, and I. We spend a ton of time together, a ton of time fishing together. Mitch worked his butt off trying to find perch while I was guiding, and then he'd bounce back and help the customers, and then him and Nick ran around. So I also want to thank Nick Sakella for coming out and helping us get on some more perch.
Definitely.
Working as a team, if you're coming up to Mille Lacs Lake, you're going to put some perch on the ice. The perch are back. Tune in to Dialed In Angling each and every week. And until next week, I'm Tony Roach. Can't wait to see you guys on the water. This has been Dialed In Angling Podcast.